Evening. Welcome to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show. My name is Leon Jones. Tonight, I am going to continue on my Black History Month series. But tonight, I'm going to talk about something different other than inventors. What I'm going to present is politics. And where I'm going to go with politics is define what I believe the status quo is. Now, this was brought up to me by a comment I left on one of my fellow YouTubers' pages. So, here it goes. When you talk about the status quo, let's look at Donald Trump in office right now. And if you listen to what I'm saying, you're going to connect the dots. And after 5 minutes, you're going to know what the status quo is without me defining it. But I'm going to go ahead and define it while I give you the scenario. Okay. You have Donald Trump in office. Now, we all know Donald Trump is an outsider. He has never been part of any political party. But he was elected based off of being an outsider. After that, now, you're going to know where I'm going. When we deal with the status quo, with any politician, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, we talk about the establishment. Now, why is this crucial? Well, what the establishment, Republicans and Democrats do, they basically campaign for their constituents. It's because the constituents that they have, or their donors or their lobbyists, they're the ones who are giving them the money to write laws to benefit them. Basically, when you deal with politicians, particularly your Congress and Senate, you're dealing with a bunch of individuals who want to stay in power because, number one, they know how hard it is in the real world when it comes to actually working to produce something. So when you're a politician, you don't have to produce anything. In fact, you can utilize the same issues over and over and over and over again each election cycle because in the long run, you know you're going to get elected because you gerrymander the districts. And that just depends on if your party is in power. Look what Harry Reid did for all political appointees, and we're talking about secretaries. Well, when the Democrats had the senatorial power, Harry Reid changed the filibustering rules. Here's what I'm talking about. You have your nuclear option and your cloture option. Again, when you're dealing with your cloture option, that means you must have 60 votes to get your candidate confirmed. Well, if you can't get 60 votes, what are you going to do? You go down to what we call the nuclear option, which is 51. That's the majority. Now, the Republicans are looking to do the same thing when it comes to confirming Supreme Court justices, because the Republicans hold the majority in the Senate. Now, when you deal with the Congress and the Senate, and you also have to include all of your, I call them all congressional bodies, whether it is your state, local, or federal, because if you look at the system that we have, it is all parliamentary. It's supposed to be a checks and balance system. But the problem is your CEOs or your chief executive officers or chief executive law officers in your state, your federal, your cities, and your counties, and we're going to talk about the executives, the mayors, your governors, and your presidents, well, they all have term limits. Well, why don't city councils, county councils, Congress and Senate, state legislators have term limits. Well, they don't have term limits because they're the ones getting all the money. You look at it, it's your legislators who make the laws, and it's your House bodies who actually carry the purse strings. That means they can fund or defund programs. So when you're dealing with the status quo, you're dealing with politicians who are in what we call an establishment position. They are career-minded politicians. Here's what they can do. In order to have any type of term limits established, it's going to take 2/3 of the House and Senate, or possibly 3/4 of the states, to ratify any change of amendments in the Constitution. Well, let's look at it very closely. If I'm a congressperson, whether I'm in the federal government or we go down to the state house or the city or county council, would I want to do that? Absolutely not. You know why? Because I'm benefiting off of it. You think about all these politicians. Look at the health care bill. The politicians do not have the same health care coverage that we have. In fact, theirs is better. But they're the ones who make the laws. Again, the donors, the CPACs, the lobbyists, your corporations are funding these politicians. In other words, all of your politicians, regardless of party, are basically bought off by the corporations. This is why you have big monopolies. Because if you have a politician in that district, let's say there's an AT&T. Say AT&T wants to buy a company, and they've already done it, DirecTV. Well, that politician in that district may be given money, campaign funds, by the lobbyist of AT&T. You see, it's all a racket here. Now, if you really look at it, it should be illegal. It's almost like racketeering. You could, in essence, if you really know the law, you could charge all these companies and politicians under the RICO statute. Now, what does RICO stand for? It's racketeering, influence, corrupt organizations. That was an act established in 1970 so government can come after all your corrupt organizations. If you look at the other side of the coin, unions do the same thing. When it comes to establishment or status quo, it's basically about funneling money from unions, corporations, different lobbyist groups, even schools and education. They're all part of this racket. And that's why you see the same politicians who run for office and they never leave. They're known as incumbents. Well, again, the incumbent knows he or she has the money to continually run. This is why nothing gets changed. And the problem that the incumbents have with Donald Trump is an outsider. He's used to making decisions. You're going to have to understand when it comes to running any company, you're going to have to downsize, you're going to have to budget, and you're going to have to utilize your manpower where you need it. These politicians don't understand that. It's because they're not spending their money, they're spending our money. So if somebody comes to you and asks you, what do we mean by the status quo? You let them know that we are talking about the establishment career politicians. This is what they do as well. They will give you the intent that they're going to change certain policies. Certainly, if you are the working man or woman, they're going to try to appeal to you. They do a good sales job. But if you're smart enough and you follow elections every 2 years, you find that you're going to hear the same issues. Look what the Democrats do. Who are they appealing to? They appeal to women, blacks. So they basically play identity politics. All they're doing is getting the left-wingers riled up. Who do the Republicans play to? Well, the Republicans do the same thing. They play to big business and corporations, but both parties play to Wall Street. This is why during the Obama administration, you used to have the NASDAQ end at 16,000. Well, when you get a number that high, that tells you that the rich are getting richer. So, what I'm doing is breaking it down to where you see both sides. When it comes to the Democrats, they talk about wealth redistribution. But what they really want to do is take wealth from the working person and give it to non-working people. Well, Republicans want to do the same thing. They want to take monies from the working person and go up the chain. That's called corporate welfare, to fund these banks and other businesses who have failed. You look what happened in 2008, the Countrywide scandal. You look at Enron. If you understand the dichotomy of what's going on in a political structure or political sector, you can see, looking at both parties, it's really about the money. I mean, the NEA is a big teachers union. What do? They funnel money into the Democrat. You get AT&T. It's a big company. What do? They funnel money into the Republicans. This is why the area that has to rely on legislation and regulation is small business. Why? Because the small businesses don't have that clout to pay a politician so they could legislate law for utilizing advantages for big businesses. When it comes to taxes, this is why the big companies, if you are somebody like a Mitt Romney, after a certain amount of money, they no longer pay income taxes. And this is with everybody. This is why I want you to understand that the whole system was set up so every state and every body gets representation. It's not like that. Basically, our vote doesn't count. We don't have the money. And when it comes to any law or any legislation that is made by your congresspeople who hold the purse strings, if you're not well organized, well financed, and if you don't have an agenda, you're not going to be heard. And this is why African Americans have problems with the Republican Party. Well, you don't have any money to donate to the Republican Party. You don't vote for them. So if you don't vote for the Republican Party, they're not going to do anything for you. All your money is going to the Democratic Party, and guess what? If you were running a business, you'd be in the red all day because the Democrats haven't done anything for you. They will give you the intent that they're going to do something, but if you look at your communities in the black community, they look like war zones. Why? Because that's what the Democrats do. They promise you everything for free, but when you get something free, it's not always good. You get the minimal. And what happens when you get the minimal? You're being controlled. In other words, if you get into that welfare program and that Section 8 housing, there are going to be certain rules you must abide by in order to keep it. You can't have a man living in that house. You can't have a job while you're on welfare. Well, you can have a job while you're on welfare, but you have to make a certain amount of money. Again, you're going to be controlled. But this is what the status quo does. They maintain their power by utilizing the working people when it comes election time to get in office with the popular vote or the electoral college, but they're being funded by the corporations, constituents, CPAC, unions, and other big business. You have to understand, that's what politics is. And because the politicians understand that, hey, if I can be a career politician, I don't ever have to go out and work as hard as somebody in the real world, because I know how hard it is. I'm going to get a great retirement. I'm going to get great health care benefits, and I'm going to have all this even if I am out of office. And guess what? The taxpayer is going to fund it for me. And that is what the status quo is. It's to maintain the establishment. This is why the establishment Republicans and Democrats don't like Donald Trump, because he is an outsider. He worked in the private sector, and in the private sector, again, you have to utilize P&L statements. Well, these politicians don't know anything about P&L statements. These politicians don't know anything about accounting because they've never run business. They never had to hire anybody. They don't know about what it takes to produce something. The only thing that they know is how to campaign every 2 to 4 to 6 years for power. And what they're doing, they're using the same old recycled issues, and they have to. Because if they didn't have any issues, the issues would be solved and they'd be out of power. And that's the bottom line. And if you understand what I'm presenting to you in this video when it comes to politics, you can see how the real world works, and you won't get as emotionally charged. See, it doesn't matter who's president, because the president does have term limits, 4 to 8 years. The president is a figurehead, just like the prime minister. Again, we have a parliamentary style government. Came from England, so we won't have a monarchy. Everything is supposed to be checks and balances. You have the executive, you have the legislative branch, and you have the judicial branch. You have one who actually can utilize executive orders. That's the president. You have another one that makes laws, and you have another one that interprets laws, known as the judicial branch. Of course, the legislative branch makes laws. But to do all of this, you must have people in power. And also the media. The media is a very powerful force as well. And when I mean people in power, you must have corporations, unions, and I'm talking about the big people who have the big money, not the small people like us. The big people with the big money who have an agenda, because they're going to get the laws to benefit them. You know why? Again, it's about the money. And with politics, there's a lot of dishonesty going on. Politics will make a holy man become a hellish man because of temptation. And this has been going on ever since Warren Harding, and goes back as far as Andrew Jackson and Grover Cleveland. That's how much corruption we've had in a political system. Now, what Donald Trump is trying to do, he's trying to change it. But do you think these Congress people and senators want to change? No. Because they benefit off of it, because it is their lifestyle. They're living off the fat of the land. The people who are funding both parties are people like me who get up and work every day. And I'm under the guise of having to work overtime and 2 jobs to make ends meet, and I'm actually producing something. Where these politicians, they're not producing anything but a bunch of hot air. If you don't believe me, you look at what's going on in this country. This country's been getting worse every decade. And until we have some prominent Congress people, and that's on your state, your federal, and your local politics, or your local levels of government, guess what? We can have all the rah-rah we want, everything's going to be the same. So at the end of the day, the definition of the status quo is the establishment. They want the system the way it is. And when you have the establishment or your insiders, nothing is ever going to change. It's going to stay the same. Because if it did change, the establishment, Republicans and Democrats, would be out of business. So if anybody asks you about the status quo, you tell them that the status quo definition is the establishment or career politicians who are going to remain in power because they know how to utilize their donors, constituents, which are large corporations and unions, and they also gerrymander the districts so the challenger who runs against them will not have enough money to beat them in the election. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show for this evening, Monday, February 13th, 2017. You can tune in to the 401 Talk Zone radio show every Monday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Blog Talk Radio. Guest call-in number is 215-383-5785. If you like my videos, please share and subscribe to the 401 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube or Blog Talk Radio so I can continue to give you quality information for educational purposes from a professional and mature perspective. Also, on this channel, I do not debate, engage in social, emotional, or even controversial issues. Now, there are some issues, like tonight's issue that I will talk about, but I'm utilizing it for educational purposes. Therefore, I'm giving you the knowledge and the tools so you can understand how the real world works. Everything here is realistic and positive. Remember, knowledge is power. And if you have a business or a topic that you would like for me to talk about on Blog Talk Radio or YouTube, please email me at lej6521@gmail.com. And if you have a comment, please leave it in the comment section under the video. But make sure that your comments are pithy. No bloviating, pettifogging, or filibustering if you wish to opine. Let me give a shout out to some of my fellow YouTubers. I want to give a shout out to Miss Karen Kennedy, Sonny Pooh, Rashawn DeLay, Q Wilson, Brother Matt Coley, Big Body Trucking, Reg the Bad Guy, and the Real Deal from Gary, Indiana. And that's it for this video. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. Remember, please be gentle and respectful to each other, and have a wonderful and blessed night. Good night.